मंगलम भगवान वीरो मंगलम गौतम प्रभु।
ओम नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं।
Jai Jinendra and welcome to Mangalam. Today we are going to present to you Professor Gary Francione speaking about veganism. Then we will be bringing to you a youth dance from New York Youth Group, and then after that there will be presented a vegan recipe for you to cook. As you know, Professor Gary Francione teaches animal rights law at Rutgers University. He is very passionate about what he does, and he says that there is a principle of ahimsa, which is the supreme principle that he thinks everybody should follow as it pertains to the animal rights. And he says that everybody should follow this to make sure that every animal has a right to exist in this world. Please listen to his lecture as he talks about the veganism. I'm sure you will change your views of looking at the animals in a different way. So please enjoy.
Jai Jinendra. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about ahimsa in veganism. I recently wrote an essay on this subject in the winter issue of the Jain Digest, which is the magazine of the Jain Federations of North America. And I came to Jainism as a result of my veganism. Now, first of all, let me explain what I mean by veganism. I use that word in a sense as a concession. I really think of myself as a strict vegetarian. The problem is the word vegetarian has lost a lot of its meaning. I think of a vegetarian as somebody who does not eat animal products. Unfortunately, that concept has now become used to apply to people. If somebody doesn't eat beef but they eat chicken and fish, they're vegetarian. Or if people eat certain sorts of flesh but not other sorts of flesh, or they eat dairy products or whatever, they still consider themselves vegetarian. So we have this word vegan, which means consuming no animal products, but it actually even goes beyond what we eat, and it has to do with what we wear and what we use in terms of shampoos or cosmetics or things of that nature. And so a vegan is somebody who does not eat any meat, any poultry, any fish, or any dairy, any honey, of course eggs, and also does not wear leather, wool, or silk, and does not use products which have been either tested on or contain animal products. Okay, so that is what I mean when I use the word vegan. Somebody who does not consume any animal products. When I take multiple vitamins, for example, I'm very, very careful to make sure that the source that that all of my vitamins are sourced in non-animal non-animal ingredients. Now, I came to Jainism through this. Many years ago, when I was a young man, I grew up during the time when America was involved in a war in Vietnam, and I opposed that war. And I was a very young guy at the time, and I remember being in protests and protesting the Vietnam War. And at the time, everybody was talking about nonviolence. Dr. Martin Luther King was a very important social force at that time, and he was always talking about nonviolence, and he talked about Gandhi. And many people in this country, really, until Dr. King talked about Gandhi and the principle of nonviolence, people didn't really know who Gandhi was. I mean, they knew he was some Indian guy who had arguments with the British government and basically was responsible for throwing the British out of India, getting the British to leave. But most people didn't really know very much about Gandhi, and they didn't really know very much about his principles of nonviolence. Dr. King brought those to this country, and so many of us were very interested in this, and we gravitated to this notion of nonviolence. This is great. This is wonderful, and so I thought of myself as somebody who took seriously the principles of nonviolence. I protested the war. I didn't believe in violence. I thought guns were bad and violence was bad, and that we ought to all it was the time of everybody, it was flower power, and everybody ought to love everybody else and things. And in retrospect, in many ways, that was a very superficial concept of nonviolence. I didn't really know anything about nonviolence. It was only later on, when I was older, and I was in my 20s, and a friend of mine who was a Buddhist. I was discussing with her one day my interest in ahimsa, in nonviolence, and she said, "But you eat meat." And I said, "Well, yes, I do." And she said, "Well, how can you believe in nonviolence if you eat meat?" And I said, "Well, everybody I know believes in all of my friends believe in nonviolence. We all eat meat." And she said, "Yeah, and you're all wrong." She said, "Think about it." She said, "If you believe in nonviolence, shouldn't nonviolence start with what you're eating, what you're putting in your mouth?" And I said, "Well, that's an interesting question, and I hadn't really thought about it." And she said, "Well," she said, "I think you ought to visit a slaughterhouse." And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, she was right. And I did visit a slaughterhouse. And I immediately stopped eating all flesh. Immediately. It wasn't a matter of 2 days later. Immediately. That day. The end of it. It was a horrible experience. For those of you who have never been to a slaughterhouse, it is really a quite a terrifyingly horrible experience. And so I accepted that this was violence and I couldn't participate in it, so I stopped. And I continued to eat fish for a while because I didn't really think of fish as having sentience or feelings or able to feel pain or whatever. And then I read some papers that indicated that fish felt pain, and I stopped eating fish. And then I learned about dairy. I learned about how cows were, how dairy products were produced, how milk was produced, how butter was produced, how ice cream. I was a big ice cream fan. I loved ice cream. I loved cheese. And I used to eat a lot of those products, and I learned how those products were produced, and I realized that there is as much violence in a glass of milk as there is in a pound of steak. Animals that we use for dairy they live longer, they're treated every bit as badly, and they all end up in the same slaughterhouse anyway, after which we consume their, or humans consume their flesh. So there really is no distinction between dairy and meat. And so by 1982, I was a complete, strict vegetarian or vegan or whatever you want to call me. I was not eating any animal products whatsoever, and it was as part of that, when I became a vegetarian, a strict vegetarian, and gave up all animal products, the principle of ahimsa started taking on a different dimension in my life. It had a different meaning for me, because I really did realize that ahimsa isn't something that's an abstract principle. It's something you live with every second. It's something that you live with every minute. It's something that informs your whole life. And it was that led me to start studying Jainism, because ahimsa was no longer an abstract concept. It was something that really mattered in my life, something that shaped what I did every day of my life. It was part of my thinking every time I sat down. Was I going to be consuming any animal product? I would ask people, what are the ingredients in there? Is there any milk? Is there any ghee? I have always been somebody who enjoyed Indian food, but once I became a vegan, I had to be careful about raita, about any yogurt in any recipes, or ghee, which is used in a lot of recipes. I had to ask people what's in there. When I went to restaurants, I would say, tell me what the ingredients are there. Are there any animal ingredients? So ahimsa was part of my life. It was part of my life. And I wanted to learn more about it. That's what led me to Jainism. And let me say this. Jainism is a marvelous dharma for in so many respects. One of the things that's wonderful about it is you never have an argument with a Jain about eating meat. Most Jains that I've met don't eat meat, they don't eat poultry, they don't eat fish, they don't eat eggs. They're 95% of the way there. But that other 5%, oh boy, that other 5%, boy, you can get into some heated discussions about the milk and the raita, the yogurt, and the ghee. And what I think is important is, look, the question, whether you're Svatambra, Digambra, Ahimsa is the foundational principle. It's absolutely clear that we are not, Jainism says, look, we're not all supposed to die of starvation. We can eat one-sensed organisms, we can eat plants. We're not supposed to eat more of those than we need to exist. But we can kill one-sensed organisms. It's not a good thing, but it's what we need to do to live. But you're not supposed to engage in intentional himsa against multi-sensed mobile beings. So any being that's got 2, 3, 4, 5 senses, we're not supposed to engage in any sort of intentional harm towards those beings. Now, the reality is there's no such thing as a dairy product that doesn't involve himsa against a multi-sensed organism. As a matter of fact, there's no such thing as a dairy product that doesn't involve himsa against a 5-sensed organism. And you and I, we are all 5-sensed organisms. The cow, you and I and the cow, we are 5-sensed organisms. Okay, the goat, whatever animal is producing the milk is a 5-sensed mobile being. There's no such thing as a dairy product that doesn't involve himsa. Now, some people say, well, but we don't kill the animals for dairy products. The answer is, no, of course we do. Of course we do. And for example, let us talk about cows. In order for a cow to give milk, she's got to be pregnant. Cows just don't give milk, spontaneously. They have to. They're mammals, and like human females, they have to be pregnant in order to be lactating. So dairy cows are constantly kept pregnant. Okay, and their babies, 80% of their babies are taken away from them and sent off to the veal industry where they're slaughtered for food. You can't have a dairy industry without having a veal industry, the dairy industry and the meat industry are inextricably intertwined. Inextricably intertwined. And so you can't have a dairy industry without a meat industry. Okay, the other 20% of the babies are kept in, they're circulating, they're put into the dairy industry. But it's important to understand that there's a tremendous amount of violence. These animals are, the relationship between dairy and meat, very close. So there's really, some people say, yeah, but what about the fact, I visit my grandfather and, and he lives in a little village in India and they've got a couple cows. And the answer is, well, you don't have access to that milk. You live in the United States. You live in London. You live near Mumbai. You live near Delhi. You live near, wherever you live. You live anywhere where there's any number of people. You've got intensive dairy production. You've got horrible conditions under which these animals are kept. And I would say even the small farm, obviously it's a better life for those animals than the larger cooperatives or the big the big intensive dairy situations. But it still involves violence. It's still not necessary. We don't need to eat any animal products to be healthy. We don't need to eat animal products to be healthy. And indeed, animal products are probably killing us, and animal products are certainly imposing enormous environmental costs on our world. So we don't, and so however humanely the item is produced, it still involves some himsa. It still involves himsa on the earth. It still involves himsa to that animal, because again, in order for that cow to give milk, she's got to be pregnant. There's still, even in small places, there's there are humans that are inseminating these animals. There's violence to that cow. There's violence to her body. So I think it's important for us to realize that there is no such thing as a dairy product that doesn't involve himsa. They all do. Dairy, ghee, yogurt, milk, they all involve himsa. None of them are necessary, and you know what? There are a lot of substitutes. When I became a strict vegetarian 26, 27 years, a long time ago. When I became a strict vegetarian, there weren't really a lot of options, but now there are all these soy butters and these soy milks or almond milks or rice milks. We don't need to eat. There's soy yogurts, there's coconut-based yogurts. I love to cook Indian food. I cook Indian food. I eat Indian food all the time. I never use ghee. I never use milk. I never use raita. I use soy yogurts. I use soy milks. I use soy butters. I can clarify the soy butters and make a ghee that's made out of soy butter. It's very, very easy. It's not necessary to eat any of that stuff. And it's also not necessary for us to wear animal products. We should be wearing cotton, we should be wearing synthetic fibers, but wool involves violence. If you've ever seen, I have seen sheep being shorn. It's terrible. It involves an enormous amount of violence, and also a lot of the wool that we have come from animals that are on their way to slaughter. They shave them before they go into the slaughter facility. So if you buy wool, you don't know if that came from an animal that's being slaughtered, but the bottom line is they're all slaughtered anyway in the end. So even if they're kept for a few years and their wool is taken, eventually they're all killed. And there's a lot of violence that goes on in the meantime. Leather involves violence, silk involves violence. As Jains, we are committed. We can't avoid all violence, but we can avoid all intentional violence to multi-sensed mobile beings. This means that we should embrace veganism as the lifestyle of ahimsa. We should not eat animal products. We shouldn't wear animal products. We shouldn't use products that have ingredients taken from animals. All of that involves himsa. All of it involves himsa to 5 sense mobile beings. All of it is prohibited under the basic foundations of Jain Dharma. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed the lecture. I'm sure you're going to be differently looking at the animals. We're going to take a short break, but we're going to come back right away with a very nice performance by the New York Youth Group. So don't go away. We'll be right back. For your tax-free donations, suggestions and comments, please visit mangalamshow.com. Welcome back to Mangalam. Now we present to you a beautiful dance performed by the New York Youth Group at the Pratishtha Mahotsav of New York Jain Center. So enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the program. Now we'll take a very short break, but we'll be coming back with some vegan recipes for you to cook, so don't go away. For your tax-free donations, suggestions and comments, please visit mangalamshow.com. Welcome back to Mangalam. I hope you enjoyed the program. Now we are going to take you for a vegan cooking. Our host Dhaval Mehta will be talking to Yashoda Jordan, who will be teaching you how to make the pineapple pie. And it's a vegan, so you can enjoy it.
Welcome to Jane Cooking. How many times have you been to the supermarket or the dessert counter and been, forced to not have any of those delicious looking treats because they have eggs and they're not Jane, they're not vegan? So today in the cooking segment we have Yashoda Jordan joining us again, and today what we're making is, well, why don't you tell us?
It's a pineapple pie, no baking, just pop it in the refrigerator. It's very easy. What you need is instant pudding and vanilla, and I've put just a little bit of juice of the pineapple. We need a crushed pineapple, 10 ounce in its own juice, no sugar added, and so this is what I'm mixing. And these are made with soy products, so it's always a bit watery, so don't follow the directions on the package. So just a little bit of water, and it looks funny actually. Yellow.
So what's everything that's in here right now?
That's the instant pudding, plus a little bit of the pineapple juice that came into the can.
That's from the crushed pineapple cans?
Yes. So I think this...
And you're heating it up right now?
Yeah, because you want it to be thick.
Okay.
So let me turn this off. Okay. Then put everything in here, in the pineapple. Stir it a bit. And what you also need is the soy sour cream. This is widely available also, and especially at Whole Foods. Let me see, where do you open it? And it's about, what you need is about 3/4 of this. And then stir it in, stir it carefully in. Then after it's all mixed in, you put it in the graham cracker crust.
Crust over.
And pour it in. Then pop it in the refrigerator overnight, and this is what it looks like.
So this is the final...
This is the final product.
Pineapple, what do you call this thing?
Pineapple pie. And it's nice and tight, and I'm going to cut it.
That looks amazing.
Well, I hope you like it.
Let's invite one of our studio audience members to try this.
Oh, it's too hot in here. It's almost collapsing. Wait a minute, like the real thing, we have a soy whipped cream, which is excellent. You can also get this at Whole Foods. There.
So,
It's delicious.
I hope you enjoyed today's program. Again, next time, we'll be bringing you another exciting program. Please tune in. Until then, we would like to know your opinion about our show. So please write to us at mangalamshow@gmail.com. For more information, please visit our website at www.mangalamshow.com. Until next week, we take your leave. Jai Jinendra.
जरा हाथ जोड़ कर बोलो जब जय